welcome to the Daughter Arise channel. My name is Yvonne. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so that you can be notified of any new uploads. And if you like the content that I share, please hit the thumbs up button. So today I wanted to do a video about male sexual abuse. It's something that I've been thinking about a lot lately, especially as sometime in the future I am planning on trying to set up something for male survivors in my area of London. In my work that I've been doing over the last 10 years through Daughter Arise, I have supported male victims and survivors. Even though as male and females we go through similar emotions in terms of blame, shame, guilt, there are other things that impact on our experiences, not just as individuals, but also because of our gender. And I came across this article in Psychology Today by a man named Michael Pitaro. He is a psychologist. He's doing a lot of work to try and raise awareness of male sexual abuse and to encourage more research into male sexual abuse so that in turn policies and programs can be put in place to support male survivors. So in his article he shares some statistics and different information surrounding male sexual abuse. I will leave a link to the article below as well for you to check out yourself. I have covered videos to do with male celebrity sexual abuse, those males that have been in a public arena that have gone through sexual abuse, and I've also talked about some of the reasons why men find it hard to come forward to say that they have been abused. So the first myth that Michael shares is if a boy experienced sexual arousal during the abuse, he wanted and or enjoyed it, and therefore it is his fault. The fact is males can respond to sexual stimulation with an erection and even an orgasm. However, that does not suggest they willingly welcome the abuse or exploitation. It is simply a biological response to being sexually aroused, even if the experience is traumatic. Now I just want to add to that is something that also happens with female survivors as well. It's something that I talk about in my book Daughter Arise and in my book Choose Life as one of the number one reasons that hindered me in being able to talk about my sexual abuse openly earlier on in my journey. Because my body responded to stimulus, I felt damned. I felt that I was to blame for my abuse and felt complicit in my own abuse. Just because your body responded in a certain way to stimulus does not make you complicit in your own abuse. The second myth that Michael shares is sexual abuse is less harmful to boys than it is to girls. And he puts this as fact that the harm caused by sexual abuse mostly depends on issues unrelated to gender, including the abuser's identity, the duration of the abuse, whether the child told anyone at the time, and if so, whether the child was helped or believed. Whether you're a boy or a girl, sexual abuse is harmful to both genders. It doesn't matter about the duration, it doesn't matter if it was once or 100 times. And because of that myth, it is harmful to males that have gone through sexual abuse because of the notion, the stereotype that boys are supposed to be tough, and regardless of whether we're boys or girls, we all start as children. The third myth that Michael shares is most men who sexually abuse boys are homosexual. The fact is, research studies to date suggest that men who have been sexually abused as a boy most often identify as heterosexual and are often involved in heterosexual relationships at the time of the abuse. There is no indication that a homosexual man is likely to engage in sexually abusive behaviour than a heterosexual man, and in some studies even suggest it is less likely. When we talk about those who are likely to commit sexual abuse, a lot of the research does seem to point from those who have problems with emotional attachment and different relationships. It's nothing to do with the person's sex as to why they commit the act of sexual abuse. The next myth that Michael shares is boys abused by males must have attracted the abuse because they are homosexual. Fact. There are conflicting theories as to how sexual orientation develops, but experts in human sexuality do not believe that sexual abuse or premature sexual experiences play a significant role. Sexual abuse of a child by a perpetrator has nothing to do with their gender, their sexuality. It is to do with power and control. And as I mentioned, there are other things that play in the background as to why a perpetrator chooses to sexually abuse a child. The next myth is, if a female used or abused a boy, he was lucky, and if he does not feel that way, there must be something wrong with him. But what Michael shares here, in reality, premature, coerced or otherwise abusive or exploitative sexual experiences are never positive. Female abusers often hold a positive position of power over their victims, such as an older sister, sister of a friend, babysitter, neighbour, aunt or mother. I have known people who have been sexually abused by an older female. It did affect them deeply, but they didn't feel like they were allowed to make it affect them deeply. There seems to be this notion that, you know, because it's a female, it is okay. It is not okay. With female perpetrators of abuse, there doesn't seem to be a lot of research done around it. Some figures would put it at like 2% of sexual abuse is committed by females, but I think it is actually a lot higher. So there are no winners in any child being sexually abused by anybody, whether it is a male or female. It is abuse of power, it is abuse of trust, and that is what we've got to remember when it comes to sexual abuse. Boys who are sexually abused will go on to abuse others. Professor Michael Portaro says, this myth is dangerous because it can create terrible fear and anxiety in boys and men who feel they must not be around children. They may not only fear becoming abusers themselves, but that if others find out they were abused, they will be seen as potentially dangerous to children. Sadly, boys and men who tell of being sexually abused are often viewed as potential perpetrators rather than victims who need support and guidance. With male survivors, they do need a lot of emotional support, and the same input and resources that have been put in for female survivors should be put in for male survivors as well. Even in my research and work, looking at what services are out there for male survivors, a lot of them tend to be helplines or online. There are some male survivor groups, but they're not in London. I do feel that male survivors are overlooked. I do read a lot of things to do with sexual abuse. There isn't much research out there about how sexual abuse affects male survivors. There is research to do with male perpetrators, finding out about why male perpetrators do the acts that they've done to children, but in general there's not really a lot of research, and that could be as well because not a lot of male survivors are speaking out. Male survivors are more susceptible to substance and alcohol abuse, 80% some figures suggest, compared to 11% for males that have not been sexually abused. There are lots of common psychological problems that male and female survivors experience: PTSD, anxiety, depression, psychological issues. And also in the article, Michael Portaro does say that delinquency and crime rates among male sexual abuse survivors are a lot higher. It's something that does need to be continuously talked about. If you want to find out about the work of Daughter Arise, please visit www.daughterarise.org.uk. If you want to drop me a line, please contact me at info@daughterarise.org.uk.